Social Security has long been a cornerstone of retirement planning, yet many wonder if it'll be there when you need it. Join us this week as we dissect the current challenges facing Social Security and discuss how retirees can plan for a future where reliance on this program may shift.
Welcome to Label on Fire with Label Sternbach, the financial independence and retirement show dedicated to helping you build the life of your dreams as fast as possible with as little stress as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Label on Fire.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of Label on Fire. I'm Freddie Bell, and I'm with Label Sternbach. He is the man. He's Amazon's best-selling author of Living with Financial Anxiety and also the author of the book Authenticity. He also has a website, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. It's yields4u.com, and I want to introduce the man, Label Sternbach. Hello, and welcome back.
Hey, how are we doing today?
Unbelievable. And the Social Security, a lot of times I have a difficult time saying those two words, but it's such a big piece of a lot of retirement programs. It's been a cornerstone of retirement planning. Yet a lot of people wonder if it'll be there. What are your concerns with the long-term viability of Social Security, Label?
So the long-term viability of Social Security, well, let's put it this way. I don't think when I'm ready to retire and collect Social Security, it probably will not be similar to the program that will exist at that point. Probably will not even be a pale reflection of what it is today. Social Security has a fundamental flaw built into it. And it was something that they were aware of when they designed the program, but there were kind of checks and balances put into it. And, you know, what Congress does, which is they raided the piggy bank and they removed all the safeguards and they protected their personal interests at the cost of future generations. And so when Social Security was first established, it was based on several premises. Number one was that it was not going to be the primary retirement income for most people. Right. That was number one. It was designed to keep people out of poverty. That was its only purpose. Was we had workers who would work their entire life and then they would get to a point where they could no longer physically work and their families couldn't support them. Right. So they were becoming homeless. And nobody wanted these homeless people who had served the country their entire life to be out in the streets in the cold without food. And so the government came up with a program, and in a lot of ways it was to combat communism, because communists said, well, we take care of our workers, right? We're for the people. We're not for personal gain, right? It's all for one and one for all. And we're going to take care of you. And so FDR came up with the Social Security program as a way to combat the influence of communism in America and to create a social safety net, right? To kind of come somewhere in the middle, somewhere between communism and capitalism, and provide a safety net. But it was designed to be a safety net, not a retirement income plan. And it was also designed on the fact that the average life expectancy was 65 at the time. So most people would be on the program for 5, maybe 7 years, and then they would die very nicely, right? They had the good graces of not living to 100, as we have 10% of Social Security beneficiaries living beyond.
How things have changed.
Right, how things have changed. So first, you had most people at that point in their lives were, for the most part, invalids because they worked very hard jobs. They had serious health issues as the result of those jobs, and they just it was really money to provide for their family so that they didn't kick them out, and they had money to pay to take care of them and feed them. Over the years, that program has expanded and people have started living longer and longer. And the benefits that corporate America provided shrunk more and more. So it used to be corporate America provided pensions for life. My wife is still lucky enough to be covered, but somewhat by a pension for life, as as having been a state employee, and I'm lucky enough to work with plenty of federal and state employees who have pensions for life, who make more of their pensions than I have ever made as a W-2 employee. And It's always interesting to see that. But the corporate most Americans were not covered by that. 85% of Americans are employed by small businesses, and small businesses they really can't afford to keep paying someone who's no longer producing value for the company. And so then came along the 401k programs were a way of shifting the value proposition of we're going to pay you for life to we're going to help you save for retirement, and Social Security got put into that mix. But fundamentally, the flaw in the program of Social Security is that it relies on two things to be true. Number one is it requires that more people are paying into the program than are receiving benefits. Fundamental in the math, it requires that. Number two is it fundamentally requires that the money that is being put into the program is being invested and is growing. So that during your working years, the little bit of amount of money that you put in, that you save, is going to turn into most of the money that you're going to be withdrawing during your retirement years, and that the amount of money that isn't covered by that is being covered by the additional employees that America has created that are paying into that program. Unfortunately, both of those things are not true. They were very nice design features, but the first problem is that we didn't invest the money, right? What we did was, in an effort to shore up the budget, Congress, in their great wisdom, put two caveats on the trustees of the Social Security Trust Fund. They said, you can only invest the money in federal agencies or the federal government. Okay, so essentially they said, this money that should have been invested and should have been growing you're just going to give it back to us. We'll give you a small interest rate, but you're giving it back to us. All right, so that's number one. Number two is they also said that they can borrow against that to fund wars and whatever other, whatever flavor of the month program they decided to run. So they've depleted that trust fund that was supposed to be there for us in the future. The second problem is that the generation that is retiring right now is the largest generation in American history. And we are not replacing them. Not only are we not replacing them, right, but our population growth has shrunk. We are facing a population crisis in 2050, that the only possibility of offsetting that population crisis is with immigration. So all of this, things of controlling the borders and building walls is, it's a little bit of a red herring. Yes, we need to have legal immigration, but our legal immigration needs to be greater than what our illegal immigration has been. Otherwise, we're going to be facing a real crisis of all we're going to have is a country of old people who can't afford to do the things that they need in order to survive, right? Which is what Japan is facing.
So talk about the role then. It sounds like you said it at the beginning, and we know this about Social Security, that we talk about the role that personal savings, pensions, investment portfolios, and the like play into us having a stable retirement.
Yeah. So what we need to understand is that Social Security is not we can't count on Social Security being there for the long run. However,
you scared the heck out of me about that.
Yeah, it's not going to be there, 20, 30 years down the road. Social Security is going to have to cut the checks that it's making. They're estimating within 7 years, they're going to have to cut, right? And the headlines that we see are that the trust fund is going to be depleted, and then they're only going to be able to pay out based on the payments coming in, right? So that means that, they're not going to be able to supplement that. Checks will be cut by 20 or 30%. That's what they're estimating. What that means to us as retirees, as people who are counting on Social Security to be part of our retirement income, is that, number one, we need to plan for Social Security to not, that Social Security is going to be reduced at some point. The question is whether it's going to be reduced, in the beginning of our retirement or at the end of our retirement. That is up for grabs, but we need to have a backup plan, right? Social Security cannot be our only plan, which means that a certain amount of our money, right, cannot go towards current income. It has to go for future growth. It has to be used to offset those later years in life where maybe we're going to have to pay for someone to come in our home and take care of us, whether we're going to have to pay for a nursing facility or long-term care or assisted living, or replace Social Security when those Social Securities decrease. Now, realistically speaking, right, I can hear all the people in the comment section talking about the fact that Social Security is not going to go away. They can't afford the votes, right? They can't afford to lose the votes. And you're 100% right? Social Security they're not going to do anything that's going to look like a reduction of benefits. There is never going to be a politician, at least in the next 30 years, who comes along and says we need to reduce Social Security benefits, because they will not get reelected, right? What they will do, and what they have done for the last 10 years, is they have reduced benefits to new beneficiaries, and they've done it in ways that people don't understand. So, for instance, a few years ago, they passed something called the deemed filing rule. Deemed filing rule says that if you file for one benefit, you're deemed to have filed for all your benefits. What that effectively did, and nobody understood it at the time, other than a handful of geeks like me, was they were reducing the amount of total benefits that someone could receive. Because prior to that, someone would receive benefits, and they would file for their spousal benefits and then suspend their own benefits and allow it to get delayed retirement credits. And then once they got the full delayed retirement credits and it grew to a much larger sum, they would file for that, which allowed them to receive about 30 to 40% more than they can now. So Congress reduced benefits by 30 to 40% by saying we're closing a loophole that people were taking advantage of. No, it was a benefit that they were entitled to that you took away, and nobody was savvy enough to understand it when you told them that you were taking it away, right? Because they were able to frame it as we're making rich people who are taking advantage of the system not be able to take advantage of the system. Wow. So I think they're going to reduce benefits in ways that we won't predict, and it's going to be on future beneficiaries. I think they're going to reduce inflation increases, so it's not, Social Security just won't keep up with our expenses. That $1,000 that we're getting today is not going to go as far. When I was a kid, they did that. I remember very vividly that there were my neighbors who were living on Social Security, and they just became livid because Social Security made some adjustment, and people went from being able to pay for their rent to only being able to pay 50 to 60% of their rent with their Social Security check. And it was because of inflation and how Social Security recalculated the inflation adjustment. So I think those are the things that we got to worry about.
Well, that's going to keep me up at night, but we're just about out of time, but I'm just really curious. It seems as if that it's crucial to start planning now, even if Social Security is completely intact. What can we do to start taking steps today, Label, to make sure that we're not caught off guard for the inevitable changes that are coming? You've made us supremely aware of that.
Yeah, no matter what, Social Security reductions are happening. The question is, when is it going to happen in your lifetime? I think the thing that you got to do is, number one, you got to be constantly updating your financial plan. You got to be determining when is the ideal time to file for Social Security. You also got to be considering whether filing earlier so that you don't get swept up in those future changes, right? Because the way Congress is going to make these changes is going to be for future beneficiaries. And so that is one of the non-financial arguments of why you should file early. It's not because you want to get more money. It's because you want to lock in the rules that we know what they are today, because they're very unlikely to change rules on existing beneficiaries. And then you got to make sure you have a financial plan that, with or without Social Security, right, you've got that safety net so that if Social Security is not going as far down the road, you have a way to protect yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. And you can also go to yieldsforyou.com for additional information.
Yep, yieldsforyou.com. We've got a whole lot of information about this. We've got a webinar that we do on Social Security on a regular basis. We've got tools for trying to figure out when to file early and file late. And again, I highly recommend you take us up on that free retirement tax law analysis, because that is where we take a look at that and figure out, for you specifically, filing early, filing late with your spouse, when should you file, and what gets you the most money and the most safety margin in your retirement plan.
He's Label Sternbach. I'm Freddie Bell, and that's all the time we have for this deep dive into Social Security and its future. Whether Social Security evolves or you need to learn or lean more heavily on your personal savings, we've learned today that proactive planning remains the key ingredient in all of this.
If you would like to see how the Yields for You team can help you get off the Wall Street roller coaster and save you money on taxes so you can live the life of your dreams, book an appointment online at yieldsforyou.com or call 410-914-4894.
Yields for You is a registered investment advisor in the state of New York and only transacts business in states where the firm is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement. Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussion should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell or solicitation of any offer to buy or sell the investments mentioned. Annuity guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. Content should not be viewed as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation.